Hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 142, despite the fact that I missaid it in the BTS podcast of FinalBossTV, your wild game rating show. I'm your host. My name's Adam K, aka Bay, and today is the Blood Death Night, which, it's funny that it's coming on the sort of at the tail end of all of the tanking we've talked about so far in Legion, because there's been this stigma with like Blood DK and then Vengeance Demon Hunter, and they're like, oh, they're good, they're terrible, they're bad, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that today, and of course, a lot of the positives, and of course, talking about 7.2.5, which is like 2 weeks away at this point. It's right on the corner, so we'll sort of be future-proofing and prefacing that kind of thing going forward. But of course, this show would not exist if I didn't give a big shout out to the assistant producers over on Patreon. So thank you again to all the patrons, but then Thorlefulz, Ludovicus, Taislin, R4, Dalthier, and Quen for your continued support, your incredibly generous support. If you are interested in more podcasts than just the live show, those exist on Patreon. We do BTS sort of meet and greet, unscripted sit-downs. We actually did the one for Blood DK, and Fisky joined us. We were supposed to have a 4-person Blood DK BTS show, but Skulls was sick. But if you want to go through and check those out, the show notes are posted as well. There's the Fury Warrior, Arms Warrior one from a few weeks ago. There's the Windwalker one, some other BTS things. There's Windwalker. There's the, you go down here and load more, and then you can do the Preach and I talked for about, what, about 2 hours on the Legion So Far show. So if you want more podcasts, go check that out. Links down below, of course, on YouTube or right here on Twitch. So thank you all for that support. But that's enough about that introduction. My guest today, I am the odd man out, as I have 2 very nerdy Europeans joining me today. So I will try to pronounce their names properly, but I'll probably mess it up. But Torle, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Are you ready to talk to Chad about Blood DK and your pixelated glory?
Yeah, my pixelated face is ready. Oh dear, dear. I can see it on the stream now. It's really bad. Oh well.
It's totally fine. It's just the background. It looks like it's just... it's okay. I think we've had worse. You're not Roger Brown, Cam, so it's okay. And then we have Korumo over here. Hello, Koro. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You were in a cave before, but it's a little bit lighter now, so that's totally okay.
I pushed every light towards me.
Every
you know, I need to be in my darkest hour to play a DK.
Oh gosh. I mean, it is like you're role-playing in real life, right? I mean, Acarus is pretty dark and dingy, so are you gonna do it in real life too?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, that's fair. I like it. But we have... I was expecting that the pre-show wouldn't last as long as it did, but we worked together with the BTS. There was a lot of little things that kept popping up to discuss about Blood DK. And I guess just to get started here, if you both want to sort of introduce yourselves to my viewers, but the whole point of Legion is to bring on new people, new faces that are like growing up and evolving and making things in their little corners of the internet. So... But, Torle, what do you do in the Blood DK sphere? What's your background doing things and stuff for Blood Death Nights?
Well, I actually started pretty late into the expansion. I've not progressed through EN or TOV when it was actual content, but I was doing like Mythic Plus very heavily at the time, and people were seeing that, and they asked me a lot of questions about the Mythic Plus scene, and you know, I kind of started becoming more active on Acarus in the Discord, and I got the acclaimed title, and basically people come to me with questions, with logs, ask me for advice, ask me for tips in like certain boss strategies, the Mythic Plus also. But I don't I don't write any big guides or something. I leave that to others.
Well, not to like downplay that at all. That's actually been something that's been requested a lot on the show, which has sort of finagled that in this way for this show from the tank perspective that you can attest to throughout the show, is that people have been asking me, there are lots of players out there that only really do Mythic Plus. That's like their side of the game. They don't really, they just like heroic raids maybe, and they do Mythic Plus. So that's like their push, and you do a lot of that. So
yeah.
What's your highest? Yeah, well, you could. What's your highest key you've pushed recently?
Recently, not that much actually. I've been kind of busy doing other things, and the main group that I've played with, they're not always online, So, but the highest key we've done is 26 in time, and recently I'd say like 24. I did Mob Souls, but yeah, it's been a bit difficult also because affixes haven't always been cooperative.
Grievous this week. I've been healing a few on my baby Mistweaver monk, which not fun to heal on a Mistweaver. You just can't. Grievous sucks, but
it depends a lot on the healer class, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Is Grievous a thing? I haven't noticed.
Says the Blood DK.
Yeah.
I haven't had a Blood DK tank in these yet. Brewmaster, I was doing some keys last night, and Brewmaster is tough because they want to take damage, so their stagger always just adds to it's a nightmare. But would people know, because you say the 26, was that an Eye of Ajara perhaps, or was that the Court of Stars? Because there were those two videos that came out a while ago that went like semi-viral around the Discords about like, oh my god, look at this group dunk this 26 plus. Which one were you either?
It was the Eye of Ashara video you probably talk about was 24.
Oh, 24.
But that wasn't us actually. That was another group.
Oh, okay.
Sadly.
There's a few of those that have been.
It was during the same week, and we did push Court of Stars. This actually it was not the same week. Now you get me confused.
Yeah. See, when these happen, like I watch it and I'll skip around to see the bosses and see how they pull trash packs, because it's every single mob is like a boss, like 300 million HP on everything. So it's crazy to see the high keys.
Yeah, especially the bosses themselves, of course. I have Meow Chen in the chat confirming it.
Mm-hmm.
The bosses themselves, sometimes they go like 5 minutes boss fights.
Oh,
We're talking about bosses with basically as much HP as the Emerald Nightmare bosses. So.
Mm-hmm. For 3 DPS to deal with in a tank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's wild. Do you, on that last note for Mythic Plus, do you think how is the Mythic Plus scene going to change a little bit here when they rebalance it and turn the scaling up when 725 drops? Do you foresee, like, will 24s and 26s be possible, or like maybe after you get Tomb of Sargeras gear?
It's gonna need the tomb gear for sure. Like currently, it's not gonna be possible to do like 26, even 23. It's not gonna be doable. It's if the scaling changes right now, but we'll see how tomb gear goes, and with the set bonuses, new legendary item level, and everything. It's hard to predict where our power level will be.
Right. Well, all that aside, Koru, how about you? What do you do in the Blood DK sphere? What's your background in that?
What I do is, well, pretty much I reroll DK going into Legion, and I've been trying to push the kills as fast as possible as a Blood DK, since there weren't many that played it in the start of Legion. So that's what I do. Also, I've been trying to be as cooperative in the Blood DK Discord as I can until recently. And then I've had several people just whisper me, and I've tried to help as many as I can. But that's pretty much what I do. I raid.
Do you find, well, that's what chat was saying earlier. They were like, is that Korumo from the Speed Kill Guild? Is that sort of what you do and have been doing in Nighthold right now?
Well, we started the speed kills as soon as we killed Gul'dan. We started pushing for speed kills, just cutting healers, cutting tanks, and everything. So, yeah. Yeah,
you were talking right before the show started. You were at like almost like an 8-minute mythical Dan right now or something like that? Or you're about to push to the 8-minute mythical Dan?
Yeah, we're pretty much about to push the 8-minute mark.
I think our fastest right now is still around 11-ish. But we haven't done any of that, pushing or moving heroism around or whatever. So that's still really fast, though. Considering that the world first kills were bordering on 15. So it's far how that's come. But do either of you have any additional shout-outs to the Acaris Discord or the websites or the guide writers like that you want to make sure everyone else knows of that are out there doing good work for the little community?
Well, I have to give a shout out to Trox, of course. He's basically the grandfather of the blood theory crafting, so it would be remiss to not shout him out. Other than that, yeah, basically the entire Discord, except maybe one or two people, which I would rather not see again.
Oh gosh, yeah. You bring up Trox, and he was on the show before. There is, when I was asking and prepping the show, and I was always wondering, like, what kind of resources do you guys have out there? And all you really could give me is that, as chat sees now, it's a 14-page, gigantic, just straight up, super simple Google document that Trox put together that has gone through and sort of been updated with everything in Legion so far. But this is like the biggest resource you guys have right now, anyway. That is just this huge Google document that he's put together.
Yeah, pretty much.
Does no one else helps build this kind of stuff? I mean, I guess yet, or
well, some people have tried, but it just goes to field crafting pretty much, since you can't really math Blood DK right now due to the fact with all the procs we're getting with all the different, like we heal more the more damage we take, etc. We can't really math that out yet. Yeah,
there's a weird feeling. I can bring up the artifact calculator too, and any blood DK is going to be familiar with all this. Like, you get all this stuff you get, like, after Vampiric blood expires, you get shields, you get the heart strike heal, you've got your bone shield has a chance to critically bone shield. There's all these little things that just keep happening for blood DK that I bet it's a nightmare to try to figure all this stuff out over the course of time. You got the new passive, you have Soul Drinker now, so you have all these little things to stack and stack and stack. And then the Unending Thirst, which I don't know if that does much because of how fast that shield is, but all these, all this stuff.
Well, it depends. Like, if you were to try to simulate it, it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to handcraft the sim module to specifically affect only one boss, and then you can get the heal damage intervals and how much the Unending Thirst uptime you actually get and stuff like this. But you can make general statements, and you can make broad approximations. So it's not entirely impossible to give you accurate advice, but you just have to keep in mind that it's not always accurate. You always have to consider bosses like Star Augur, where everything just changes.
Yeah.
Well, it would be easier if every boss had that exact same swing timer.
Oh, that's still, you glazed over that before. I didn't put that in the notes anywhere, but is that still really a thing that Blood DK? Because I've never heard of any other tank caring about swing timers on bosses. So why is that still an important thing for Blood DKs to pay attention to? Is that little minutia swing timer point on bosses?
Well, first of all, it's the heal from Deathstrike, because we heal for more of the damage we take, and if you can time it into a right after you take a big hit, you will heal for more. Also, if you can time it properly and get 2 Deathstrikes in between 2 swing timers, you will get the Unending Thirst proc as well, which gives you 25% more damage and leech.
Yes, I'm bringing up the tooltip here real quick to make sure. So Deathstrike was changed with Legion, right, to have the new version of it. It wasn't like this in Warlords, correct?
No.
Yeah, it was quite different than before.
Yeah, but so it deals almost 300% weapon damage. For the purposes of chat, to make sure we're on the same page, whenever I show the tooltips and things, we're looking at the 7.2.5 currently working one, just in case that the live values might look different, but because 7.2.5 is right on the corner, we're going to use those values to make sure we're clear. But the physical damage, and then it heals you for 20% of the damage taken in the last 5 seconds with a minimum of 10% of your max health. So obviously the damage you would be taking is way more than the max health minimum, but do you guys use like
challenging content? It is, yeah.
Do you have like a weak aura that like tracks how much your Death Strike would be healing you for, to like keep updating the last 5-second window or anything like that to like min-max that amount? Or because how do you...
I've used that, but I found it not very useful actually. Generally you don't, if you want to maximize your survivability, you don't want to maximize your DS heal, you want to maximize like your DS efficiency. You have to use DS at the proper timing. And if you're waiting with DS just to, or like cramming in more DS just because you had a big damage spike before, you might not have it again in the future, stuff like this. So I find just like going by gut feel whether I need the DS at that moment or not is more reliable than tracking the last 5 seconds of damage taken, which like it doesn't really give you that much more information than what you already know.
No, I agree. I've used that before as well, but I just removed it and I instead moved my health bar to the center of my screen almost to just see. I can reliantly see how much I've been taking for the last 5 seconds, and yeah, just using my gut feeling when I need to Death Strike.
The other change too that needs to make sure we're stated is that Death Strike now costs just runic power. It's a spender in the old builder spender of runes to runic power, and then you spend those. So that also, and the point you brought up with the double Death Striking thing is you have to have enough runic power to do that global to global to then make use of the Unending Thirst bonus, which would heal you for the Death Strike amount, and then the 25% leech and the Death Strike increased damage. You get the damage based on the damage the actual Death Strike does. There's a lot of, I can see how that could be a lot of little min-maxy points that maybe that all Blood DKs utilize.
Yeah, Unending Thirst, if you don't if you don't try to min-max it the way Koru does, it basically reads as you get 25% bonus damage against Death Strike damage against spellcasters. Like you can have 100% uptime on Starger, and that's pretty nice.
Well, that's a good point too, because that's the other thing is that the shield given to you by Death Strike, Blood Shield, is only physical damage absorption.
Yeah.
So
and that is mixed feelings about that.
Well, that's a weird one, because if you're only taking spell damage, it never eats your Blood Shield, which means you keep up Blood Thirst, which means you just do more damage with your Death Strikes, just for fun.
Yeah, pretty much. It also keeps Soul Drinker amazingly. No, not Soul Drinker, right? Yeah, it helps to keep Soul Drinker up as well. On spell fights.
Yeah, so I mean that's sort of the whole point. So we'll bring that up over here again, just in chat doesn't know. So overhealing by Death Strike and consumption, your golden circle, will increase your maximum health by 50% of the overhealed amount up to a maximum of 30% of your actual health. So if you keep Unending Thirst up to give you more Death Strike healing passively, keeping the shield up, which means you can keep stacking more HP. How high have you seen? I mean, it's a maximum of 30% HP, but what kind of ridiculous HP numbers have you guys been getting with just combining all of your little HP hooks and things?
Well,
Anything?
It's a bit annoying because literally after the 7.2 launched, for 1 week we were super overpowered because Soul Drinker just refreshed itself constantly and it never dropped off. So at that point, you could basically just have 30% passive baseline increased max HP, which was super overpowered.
Okay.
And then, like after 1 week, they bug fixed it, but it was basically a nerf. And right now, it's pretty hard to maintain 30% max HP, but you can get with Foul Bulwark close to 10 million HP in combat. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, I think I've come up to about 15 million HP in a raid environment so far.
Okay.
With Vampiric Blood.
Sure, no big deal. Just 15 million. No, that's fine. It's stacking all the little bits and pieces which they'll trickle in through there, but that is sort of the thing. I mean, Guardian Druids have a lot of HP too, but I still think Blood DK is probably like the HP tank in those periods of time. Obviously, it's not a constant thing, but I had so 7.1.5 was the last big patch that changed much for Blood. I have a huge picture here that is now not loading. Oh, there it goes. So you had a lot of little things in the first pass, which at the time was that what you hoped would bring Blood DK up in compared to the other tanks, but there's a lot of things here. I mean, Blood Worm's healing per worm was increased, Will of Necropolis damage reduction was increased, Vampiric Blood now increases absorbs as well as heals.
I would say that the biggest change in 7.1.5 was the Bone Shield charges are only consumed on melee attacks and special deflection. That was
massive. Amazing. Especially on scenarios, just losing a Bone Shield stack every 5 seconds on scenarios was, it was a nightmare.
And like if you compare it to Gwarm, his multi-headed attack does not count as melee attack, so you can get 100% uptime on 10 Bone Shield stacks. And like Annihilate on Alluriel doesn't consume stacks because it's not a melee attack. That I would say that 7.15 is the patch which made Blood DK like somewhat viable.
Yeah, we could actually tank cutting edge without having to jump all these loops and holes.
There was, because like you had Bone Storm heal increase, that one of the big ones that I think really made Blood DK rejoice a bit was that Gorfine's Grasp reduced to 2 minutes from 3. You had all these things. The Mark of Blood heal increased. The one thing that actually didn't stay, I'm looking at this right now, was Rune Tap was actually 40% damage reduction that was bumped up from 25, which is rather ridiculous. That's a huge. That's like a mini shield ball all the time. Even though you had to fight to get Rune Tap back because it didn't exist at the beginning of Legion during beta. They just took it out. It was gone.
Well, it's a talent. It was a talent back then as well, but it was only 25%, and you would only use it on scenarios pretty much. But well,
yeah, I've used it on
it's
2 bosses so far in the entirety of Legion.
Like 2 bosses?
2 bosses. And that's only been scenarios and Odin Mythic.
Right. It looked like, I mean, I was going back through the 7.1.5 notes when I was preparing mine, and this is one of like the largest chunks for a spec was Blood DK. It was just so many buffs across the board. Except the few small things that were 7.2.5 or 7.2 rather didn't really do anything. You got legendary changes. Your Accurate Drape had some mastery on it. Ooh. And your Radagor Bone Leggings went up plus 2% DR on Bone Shield. And then Service of Gorfeed had a bunch of Leech added. And that was...
Yeah. Actually, one of the biggest changes in 7.2 regarding Legendaries was the change to Cephas. Because it gives now passive movement speed and 2% multiplicative haste. That was like, well... We use Cephas more than probably Drapes and Rattlegores, so that's one of the bigger things.
Yep, that...
Well, the biggest legendary change was the inclusion of the new legendaries, I would say. Since they became the best in slots instantly.
Oh, the new ones in that patch, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have up the Icy Veins guide here, and for the purposes of just looking at the tooltips is fine, but you both have a bit of an issue with their hierarchy posts right now, and you wanted to like steer the Blood DKs in the proper path here. So like what is technically, like, while we're sitting here looking at that, what should be changed on this list, and what is, because you brought the new legendaries up. So Archimonde's Hatred Reborn is the tank trinket, which is a little ridiculous for Blood DK.
Yeah.
You can time it with Vampiric Blood every time and like get maybe a big soul drinker beforehand, and it does respectable damage.
Yeah, it's pretty much 3 million free damage every 1 minute 15 seconds.
That seems pretty good.
It's about 7 to 8% of our overall damage in a boss fight, which is insane for a tank trinket.
Wow. I don't know if the other tanks get that much of a benefit out of it.
They don't, because they don't have the HP multipliers that we have.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, you have to make sure that shield gets consumed, though. Right?
Yeah, that's sometimes a bit difficult.
Sometimes you actually don't need to. It always explodes on the damage it's been taken off the shield, so you don't actually have to expire it, but it's better to use it like on Crozer, for example. You want to time it with the beams, just stand in a beam or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you want to stand in the beam anyway because of Blood Mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, well, if Blood Mirror is active, but yeah, fair enough. Yeah, little things like that. I like how there's always been this has been a thing on every DK show for all the time, and it's not really much of an anti-magic shell thing, but it's funny to see these little bits and pieces of taking huge amounts of damage to deal damage back, which is kind of the theme of Death Knights, more so with Blood. But it's funny to notice that those are still prevalent things. But so what else about the legendary item changes then? What other ones are super important that aren't listed in the proper order here, just to make sure that everyone else is on the same page?
It says that Service of Gorefiend is that it's ranked at 2nd legendary, and I would not agree on that. I would say it's a really good legendary if you needed the cooldown reduction on Vampiric Blood, which I used on Guarm Progress when we started 2-tanking it, just to have Vampiric Blood up for every multi-head. Every bite. But other than that, I don't see the reason to have it that high up. I would say it's probably in an A or B tier, but not an S tier as it is in the Ice of Ains guide.
Right.
I think it's a bit difficult to create like a ranking system like this that basically ranks all the legendaries overall, when really you should compare them for like certain uses. Like you would not use Archimond Hatreds if you are basically dying and you need more survivability. At the same time, like if you want more DPS, then you won't use the legendary belt. So if you look at like an overall ranking like this, it probably doesn't make much sense.
No, and it just spreads a bit of misunderstanding of how you should use the Blood legendaries.
Right. So which other ones then would you say are next to the Trinket, and I guess the utility of Sephuz because of movement speed? We're not talking about movement speed right yet, though, chat. Don't worry. We'll talk about DK movement speed in a moment. But so what other ones are super high up on the list besides the Trinket?
For instance, the Agrimar Stride are really good on Gul'dan progress. If you're first progressing it and you need the mobility. Like if you don't know the fight in your heart, you're gonna want the mobility not to fall off or be able to run out for Flame Crash if you're the tank that's doing that. So if I were a new DK and look at this list and I got Agrimar Stride, I would be devastated. But I was actually happy when I had them for Gul'dan progress.
Because they were changed slightly. Well, they used to only be like based on haste, which Blood DKs enjoys that anyway. But now, because of the 75% of your haste, critical strike, mastery, or verse, whichever's highest one, these are hilarious on every one. They're really funny on Fury Warriors right now because they can they get Battle Cry at the 100% crit and they just woo. But these are really good looking considering how slow-ish the Blood DK is. Anything else of note?
Well, I would say for like general purpose use, you would want the shoulders and the bracers. They don't like give multiplicative bonuses with each other, but individually they're just really good. And they're a good mix of survivability and DPS. And basically all the other legendaries, apart from the Trinket, which is basically a pure DPS legendary, the DPS value of all the other ones is pretty marginal. Like the legendary ring for Blood only is not really good for DPS. The Cephas is okay, but it's not really that much DPS either. I mean, you get 2% haste, but that's it.
Right. So the list is not super wrong, but it does have some weird... I guess because I don't know what is the point of these. Are probably just based on survivability only, but then why would the trinket be so low? Or in some ways, yeah, why would Anger Rust Stride be so low? It's almost like these be like two different lists for Blood DK for their artifacts. So, and what has changed in the legendary hierarchy, but
Yeah, that I also feel it's kind of weird that Archimonde's rate is so low for survivability because you still get a really big shield from it.
yeah, it's a huge stat stick too. I mean, there's the on use doesn't go up when it goes to 970, right? Just the passive.
No,
stats.
it doesn't.
Okay.
I'm a bit disappointed about it, actually.
Well,
I mean, our HP is going to go up, so
right.
by default, also the stats. But I mean,
so that brings us to patch 725, which is what I was leading as the new legendaries, which you've got a ring on the horizon. Everyone gets a ring, the class rings. You only need one ring for your whole class because the talent that it gives you for free will change based on whatever specialization you are. But so the ring for blood is Foul Bulwark for free, and you've also got a new chest on the horizon too. So what have you guys figured out with your two new legendaries? Korumo, you guys figured out much?
I have a bit of mixed feelings actually about the ring, because basically it gives you Foul Bulwark, which means actually in practical terms you get rune tap, because you will be taking rune tap if you are using the ring. And it kind of means that Blizzard is not going to give us rune tap baseline, which we were asking for constantly, and now we have to kind of resort to using a talent slot to get it, which it's kind of mixed feelings about that, but it's going to be good, like in the same places that maybe the belt is going to be good. Like if you need more defensive cooldowns for certain times, it's not going to give you any DPS, and the stats aren't great for it. So I wouldn't recommend it for like general default usage, but it's going to be good in some situations for sure.
I don't know if I have a link to the new chest though yet. I think the tooltip I have is broken. What is your...
it pretty much makes that blood boil heals for 100% of the damage it does.
No,
isn't that correct? Do I have an old link then?
You have an old build, I guess.
Yeah,
I
that's
think it's from WoW.
The Blood Plague deals 100% more damage. That's the one.
Oh
yeah,
so
that's right.
So Blood Plague, double damage, and of course Blood Plague is a trickle heal, like a hot, essentially. On yourself.
Increased damage and healing. That's the one.
Yeah.
How does that? Well, how does that read then? If let me pull up the tooltip for how Blood Plague reads. Shadowy disease that drains almost 400% attack power health from the target over 24 seconds. So if it's 100% more damage and healing, it just doubles both, essentially.
I don't think it double dips on it. I think they just mean like the damage is doubled and therefore also the healings. It would still probably leech 100% of the damage.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I mean, it's a decent legendary. We haven't had a single legendary that's actually good for AoE DPS, so this is kind of nice in that sense, like for Mythic Plus for sure. And on multiple targets it will be more DPS than, say, the shoulders. Even at 2 targets it's going to beat the shoulders and the bracers. And then, well, you get, because of one of our golden traits gives us absorption shield when Vampiric blood runs out, which absorbs an amount of damage equal to triple the damage that your blood plague dealt in that time during the uptime of Vampiric blood. So that absorption shield also gets doubled when you're wearing the chest, which is going to be pretty nice in some situations.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's still like the main healing from it is still a trickle heal, so you have to kind of compare against the legendary shoulders, which buffs your death strike, which is healing when you need it. It's going to be interesting to see how that will pan out.
Yeah, Umbilicus Eternus. Yeah, after Vampiric Blood expires, you absorb damage equal to 5 times the damage your Blood Plague dealt during Vampiric Blood. So yeah, on a huge amount of mobs, I'm sure you could definitely game that to a pretty big degree. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this, like these legendaries are especially, they're gonna be seen more in Mythic Plus than in raiding, I believe, since raiding is usually just one target. And so far, there haven't been many bosses in Tomb that I've seen that you require rune taps. Yet we've yet to see Mythic versions of these bosses, but so far it's been really dull about that.
Right. No, yeah, Tomb is very single target focused. There are 2 fights that have intermittent AoE, both of the Naga bosses. But outside of that, it's like a boss with like 2 big ads or a boss with 1 ad. And it's very... We'll have to wait and see how that changes things for tanks and for everyone else involved, too. So, but that's not all that Blood DK is getting in 725. Probably one of the biggest aura tune-ups ever of anyone. So you have a 15% aura tune-up across the board on all your damaging abilities, which also relates to how much healing at least comes from Blood Plague. But then you've got plus 10% more damage to Heart Strike and Death Strikes, and a 6% increase to Death and Decay.
Yeah, in terms of damage buffs, I think Vengeance and Blood are getting pretty big buffs. Probably the biggest buffs since the expansion started, to be honest.
Yeah, and I can say it's gladly taken.
Yeah,
we've been on the back foot since launch, pretty much.
It's a wild amount. What's funny is in the tooltip data mining, which I don't know if this is true or not, in the first pass of the Blood aura, it was actually at 0%, and they just cranked it to 15%. So you had nothing up to this point, even in your aura at all. So that's a huge jump up, because the one thing that's weird in the direct tune-up damage to Heart Strike and Death Strikes, that's on top of the aura, right? So it's technically 25%.
Yeah, it's on top.
Right. So have either of you tested this out on the PTR to see how it feels, the damage to healing boost? Is it like super noticeable? Because this is a gigantic number.
Well, I must admit I haven't gone into the raid testing, but on dummy, like it's instantly noticeable, the damage increase. Like it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the damage increase is way more noticeable than the healing, due to the fact that we still heal on the amount of damage we take, so it's a bit iffy like that, but the damage is really, really noticeable.
It should also be noted that on the aura it says it increases damage and healing of Death Strike, but it doesn't actually increase the healing of Death Strike. That's a separate effect that is triggered. So you're not getting 15% healing buff from Death Strike. You will get from Blood Plague and Blood Drinker and the consumption because of the damage increase, but not the Death Strike heal itself. That's independent.
And you would get more healing from, where is it? Which trade is it? Yeah, I mean Blood Feast. So if Heart Strike deals more damage, you get the mini Death Strike from Heart Strikes, really, because that'll do more damage, and 20% of that is a heal, which is nice. I don't know if Heart Strike really contributes to any meaningful amount of healing, because it's just a rotational builder.
It's about 5% on single target.
Okay. So a small boost in that regard. But, and the only other one, which you may have seen when I brought up the talent calculator here, is you've lost, what you call it? You've lost Soul Gorge, and now you have this blue thing here. It looks like Icy Veins, but it's called Heart of Ice. So Death Strike extends the duration of Icebound Fortitude by 2 seconds, which they also gave you Icebound Fortitude back recently. So that's...
Yeah, 7.1.
Yeah. Because you didn't have that at launch. So what's your guys' thoughts on... I don't know, Koru, does this looks like it's very like a raid-focused one, because Icebound Fortitude, I don't know how much longer you can actually extend the duration or how long you can actually have it up, but that could be pretty nice. What are you guys figuring out for that right now?
It feels so iffy. I actually don't know, because so far we don't have this high, like it's only been spike damage so far that's been really shugging us over, and extending our shield wall, I don't see the point. Like I would rather take rune tap, I guess, in those kinds of fights, because then I have more shield walls to use and it's more damage reduction.
Right. Because there has to be like an actual maximum. Like how much can you actually extend it by? Because
well,
it's
it's a bit bugged on the PTR at the moment.
Oh.
And you can get indefinite 100% uptime on it. I don't think that's intentional.
Oh no. Oh, okay.
So that's probably gonna get changed. But the trinket from Gil'jaeden, which the Cosmic Sliver, I think it's called, that will make the talent pretty interesting. I tried it out a little bit on the PTR, and it will be an interesting interaction because you get the reduced cooldowns on Icebound Fortitude. When you take damage, you get like stacks that you can consume with the trinket, and you can get respectable uptimes with it. So other than that, I don't think, like, if you use just the base version of Icebound Fortitude, which is the 3-minute cooldown, I don't think the talent is very good. It's useful maybe sometimes, but most of the times you're gonna have like more use out of either Spectral Deflection or Rapid Decomposition, in which Rapid Decomposition is the default choice.
Oh, Akmandor is in chat. He said, blood damage was fine during testing. Not great, but they don't feel sad anymore. Oh, that's positive. And
well, if I were to be honest, I don't feel like our single target damage is that off right now. I think this will bring us up to where Guardian Druids is right now. I think we'll still be a bit behind the Prot Paladin when they go full on DPS mode, but we won't give up all our survivability like they do. So I believe this is a required thing for us to be higher up in the hierarchy of the tanks on Mythic progression.
Okay. And his follow-up point was, if you don't abuse the trinket, and I guess with Heart of Ice, you'll get about 25 seconds of Icebound Fortitude. So the weird thing
you get a pretty good uptime, but yeah.
I guess the weird thing about tanks and taking damage is obviously you'll be taking damage constantly, but is there ever going to be a situation where you need to have like your shield wall, in this case, IBF, lasting that long, and then of course it'll be down for 2 minutes or something like that? Will there be periods of fights maybe that you'd want to have extended damage reduction for that long?
The only fight in Nighthold that I can think of where this would be like pretty good talent, at least, would be like Botanist phase 3 if you're taking the feather at the end.
True.
There it would be quite powerful indeed. So I haven't really looked much in depth into Tomb, so I don't know the most like optimal places to use it there, but I'm sure there's going to be some fights where it's going to be pretty good talent.
Right.
So far, since I haven't been Mythic raid testing in Tomb yet, but no, not yet at least. Maybe in Mythic, I hope, because right now tanking is just a glorified DPS.
In a way, outside of... I brought up on the past tanking shows that I actually liked from the outside as a melee DPS, watching the tanks do tank mechanics, or like new quote-unquote tank mechanics, like the Star Augur, either 1 tank or 2 tank taunt swapping, and like the whole clearing the room kind of thing, which helped with everyone else, or having things that weren't just like, I got 3 stacks of X, taunt at Y, which is how a lot of tank mechanics go. I like that they have tried to give, because normally 2 tanks is a thing, even though the last little blue interview that I think Slootbag did is that Blizzard they openly said, at least the encounter designer said, that some encounters that have 3 tanks are okay. So, and there is one fight in Tomb that might need 3 tanks just for smoothness. But the way that tanks have been, which is funny, back in MoP, every tank just had every talent was just for DPS. And I always brought up like, well, is it weird that all you do is talent for damage? And then in Warlords, they try to change that, but now it's sort of back to that in Legion, where now it's just everything is squished together. The better damage you do, the better mitigation you do normally. Like, they feed into each other. So...
yeah, it depends on the class a bit. If you're comparing like Seraphim, you're definitely giving up survivability for it. But maybe we'll go later into some of the downsides of Blood Decay, but one of the things that's definitely a bit of an annoyance is that our optimal DPS rotation is equal to our optimal survivability rotation, which like it doesn't really change much if you're off tanking, for example. Like you're doing the same thing to get maximum DPS that you would do if you're main tanking and trying to struggle for survival. So
yeah, you don't really have a choice in gameplay, to be honest.
Which I guess, is that a bad thing to a degree? We already kind of went over. Well, I don't want to skip around too much, but this sort of brings me into this general topic we had here. I'll move it down in the notes so I know I did this on purpose. Is that, like, I have it here, that the plight of the Death Knight, right, for Blood DK, and I was gonna ask, like, where did it all go wrong? Because it's always funny, and I'm sure all of you that play Blood DK will remember this, when they were changing over tanks in Warlords to be more active, and they were designing that based on MoP Blood DK. They're like, this is how tanks should be. They should be able to react and proactively do things to damage, and that's sort of still a thing. But it depends on which tank, of course, out of all 6 of them. But do either of you have an idea of like where it went awkward or wrong with Blood Death Knight in Legion?
I think the biggest loss is the removal of baseline rune tap. Like rune tap baseline would fix so many things, because it would give you the opportunity to like to counter the heavy burst, which is normally the downside of Blood DK. Is like you can survive sustained damage, something like Croesus, you can do very well, and you actually maybe outperform other tanks, which you don't generally hear, but yes. But when you get hit by burst damage in the face, then Blood DK struggles, and rune tap would basically fix so much that it's annoying that it's in the same tier with another mandatory talent. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that. And also what went wrong in the beginning was the removal of Icebound. Like, we didn't have a shield wall until late Emerald Nightmare, just before TOV launched.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awkward, like the only tank without an actual shield wall.
Right. Yeah, because all you had was you could spec rune tap, right, talent-wise, but then you really just healed yourself when you took damage. And
yeah,
if you took too much damage and you didn't have the heals, you just died.
Yeah, because you're giving up healing, like you're giving up a rune to gain runic power in order to pop rune tap. And that was only 25% back then as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 7.5 was 1 week before TOV. Yeah, right before that period of time. That's when Blizzard realized, though, that they took too much out for fantasy. Because Hunters got traps back, and a few other things came back to the... Like, I got Earthbind totem baseline back, so I'd have, like, a little drop totem, slow. They peppered a few things back in there.
I would much rather have had rune tap back than Icebound Fortitude.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a consensus. I've heard that a lot. Because Icebound Fortitude, whereas it is a DK ability, it's not a blood DK ability. That's for the DPS. That's they can use that. Rune Tap has been really iconic since its inception in building, and how that works with how blood DK would Death Strike or Rune Tap to deal with damage. So hopefully that'll make a change in the future. Because that's the other thing too. So you had rune changes going into Legion, where you all just have runes now. You had Blood Boil changes to be on charges, which that's a good change, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if either of you have a problem with that. Do you miss Warlord's Blood Boil where it was every other global?
Oh, God, no.
No. But at the same time, sometimes it's like, okay, you walk into like Mythic Plus, which, it's what I do a lot. I wanted to pull 3 packs or something, and then you only have 2 charges. Normally you would have a whole slew of blood runes that you could use.
Yeah.
For 2 blood, 4 death. You can walk in and just blood boil all the way. But now you kind of have to pace it a little bit.
Right. But now it feels like it's like an opener and then like an uptime bonus, where it's not just like, I remember watching Blood DK tanks in Warlords, and they were just like a strike and then just row. Yeah. Row. It was not very iconic or thematic. And the new Blood Boil graphic is cool, but... And I guess that brings me to, how does the spec just feel to play in Legion now? Like, where's the fun factor in Legion? Like, does the spec feel rewarding to play? I mean, Torle, from your Mythic Plus perspective, I'll go to you first, and then Koro can do Myriads.
Well, I would say the main drive, the main visceral good feeling that you get is when you get that really big death strike off. That really, when you drop down to 10% HP and instantly heal it up to full, that gives you just a great feeling and being in control of your own health pool. That's not something that the other tanks have really. I played a bit of Monk, and if you just get hit a lot by a Monk, eventually, if you don't get heals, you die. Even though you survive a whole lot, but as a Blood DK, you can generally take care of yourself, and you can carry groups. That really feels pretty good. And soloing bosses at the end of a dungeon if everyone wipes just because you can. Those are the moments that Blood DK shines.
What do you think about in raids then, Koru? Because you're done with Mythical Dan. You're at what, 6, 7, 8 kills somewhere in there. You beat him right before I did, I think. So
I think we're around 7 kills now.
Yeah, and you've obviously you've done it, right? You did the whole thing as a Blood DK, so the world's on fire. Obviously, and you've both cleared the whole tier. But how does it feel rating wise? Where is it a fun factor? Is it a rewarding tank to tank on?
Well, if you're looking for a challenge, then yes, of course it's really it feels good to kill a boss when you're in the top 5 DKs to ever do it. When you see 30 other Guardian Druids has already done it, it's
right.
There's not much information to go through, and then yes, Thor said when you're going at low HP on Crosus, you get a slam, you're down to 10%, just death strike it up in one go. It is really fun gameplay, and then you have the niche mechanics with AMS and the grips and the mass grips that helps out your raid more than other tanks can do, in my opinion. On Il'gynoth, we were saviors just mass gripping and a 15-second grip on into the eye. And same with Alluriel was really fun. You could just mass grip the frost ads, you could grip the fire ads when someone missed an interrupt or something. Or
you can mass grip the fire ads. But
No. Not on Mythic. We did that on Heroic, and that is fun on Heroic though. We've done that on our Heroic splits. That's hilarious. You gotta get that stun right there, and then you gotta heal everything, because if they tick twice, you die. But that's fun.
Oh yeah, and I can see that one of my healers are in chat just giving free heart attacks to the healers. That's also rewarding.
Well, that's the weird thing with how and why Blood DK, for some reason, just won't make it to bleeding edge progression, puns aside, is that you really can't have that much instability when you're progressing. You want more smooth damage, smoothing incoming damage. So that's why Guardian and Brewmaster are so strong right now, because all of their tank damage incoming is so much just the waving of your health bar is totally fine. But Blood DK thrives in getting crushed for half their health and then reacting to it, which I don't think many healers enjoy that stress on progression, because I don't know if you're about to die or not.
No, and I would just highlight the thing Thor said about this. Rune Tap would help so much on that. All the high hitting abilities would just be smooth, and we wouldn't be these roller coasters of health bars.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, but I think that they want that because technically Brewmaster monks thrive in lower health, so they get more healing spheres, which are ridiculous for expel harms and stuff like that. But that's, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if that changes, because of Brewmaster's getting a lot of changes 7.2.5, and Guardian Druids are getting slight nerfs again for the 7th patch in a row.
Well, they were pretty overpowered to begin with. So.
Oh, of course. I can't even imagine. Could you imagine if Iron Fur was still 100% like it was in beta?
Oh, no. No.
It's 65% in the patch coming up, so.
Can you imagine if Dark Moon deck Immortality was still affected by Iron Fur like before?
Just tons of free armor. My gosh. I bet by the end of this expansion, Guardian Druids, their Iron Fur will be 25% bonus armor or something ridiculous. They'll keep cutting it and cutting it and cutting it. So, but then I want to touch on a little bit here. Mobility. Yeah. And you talked about it with your boots, the legendary boots. And does this, the whole fantasy and flavor of Blood DK still fit to be so immobile? I mean, warriors have leaps and charges, paladins have horsies, and like monks have roll or flipping everything else in the world, and then guardian druids obviously have charge or blink or whatever else they have, right? And then even vengeance have, yeah, they have roar, of course, the better roar, and then vengeance has hops, they're gummy bears, and Blood DK is just like, I'll be there in a minute, I'm away. You can wraith walk, but
wraith crawl.
Yeah.
Well,
Wraith
it's
crawl
one
forward.
thing that like, it kind of pissed me off. Like when it was still Legion Alpha, Legion Beta, people asked about mobility regarding the DKs in particular to Blizzard, and they said, well, we don't want every class to have a lot of mobility. So what do? They give every class a lot of mobility except DK. Like,
and then
it feels like we're just a bit too punished here.
And then the bugs with Wraithwalk, I think every DK has noticed, like getting stuck on pebbles and corners and everything, and the fact that we actually have to pay in order to fix that in every spec.
Yeah, the glyph.
Yeah, you need the glyph.
Yeah.
If new DKs are listening now, you need the glyph of Wraithwalker, otherwise you just cannot play. Sorry.
Yeah, basically. I mean, chat brings up that you make it sound like that Paladin Horsey is useful. And I would probably attest that the other slowest tank would be Prot Paladin, because normally they have one charge of Horsey. And taking 2 charges of Horsey isn't always really beneficial because they want other talents in that row. So the only other issue is that from afar, though, all you can do as a Blood DK, I mean, you can grip, but bosses can't really be gripped. You can range taunt and stuff like that, it's fine, but you have, like, Death's Caress. But they have Judgment and Superman shield, or Super Captain America shield, right? So they don't feel as hurt from being at range. I guess you can drop D&D over there.
But somebody actually in the chat noticed that DK Wraithwalk is better than 2 charges of Paladin Horse. Well, you just straight up wrong. I mean, DK mobility, like, I'm gonna call it out, but you get only 70% compared to the horse, which is 100%. You have the same cooldown, and you get silenced for the whole duration of it. If you do any other ability, even if you pre-pot, you cancel your own Wraithwalk, and you don't even have the option of talenting for another one. It's just straight up worse than the Paladin one. Sorry.
No, that's the big thing to
agree on that.
Yeah, is you're totally silenced when you're Keenly Orc. So.
Yeah, and then again, we have Death Caress. Yeah, about that in raids. And then we have Blood Drinker on a 30-second cooldown. That's the only range abilities we actually have.
Hey, it's a talent for Blood Drinker. That's true. But it's a channel, so you have to stand still to channel it.
No, you can actually move with it.
Oh, really? What?
Yeah, you can run.
Oh, you can move. Oh, you're totally right. Yeah, you're totally right. That's right. So I guess it's not terrible. You do have a lot of similarities between mobility for prop, but I guess, yeah, 4 tanks are way more mobile than you guys, but just wear Agrimar's stride.
Yeah, we have to sometimes.
Yep. And I guess the only thing we moved over, and we're talking about ridiculous little things, is I wanted to make sure we touch on your other new trait. I missed this. I wanted to make sure. Vampiric Aura. So consumption.
Yeah, Vampiric Aura is really good.
Yeah, 20% leads to you and 4 allies for 15 seconds. Consumption is a 45-second cooldown. And the Vampiric Aura uptime is 15 seconds. So that's a lot of uptime on not a amount of leech, but 20% for you and 4 others.
Yeah, that was...
go ahead.
Yeah, that was actually quite amazing on Gul'dan Progress, where healers were struggling in the beginning, and just the leech helping out, topping people during if someone missed a soul or something, and the leash just helped. If a healer got the buff, that is.
Sure. It's
But
obviously... Oh, go ahead.
Just Thor can explain just how powerful it is in Mythic Plus.
Yeah, in Mythic Plus, it's amazing. It's probably overpowered. I hope Blizzard isn't watching, but this ability is overpowered. If you're just like in a situation where you take a lot of damage, like last boss Court of Stars, we used it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In the Mariner, in Maw of Souls, stuff like this. Everyone is doing so much DPS nowadays that it's just like a party-wide healing cooldown, and it makes DK viable at pushing high Mythic Plus, because you just give more party survivability than any other tank, which is generally the problem with high Mythic Plus, is the party tends to die.
Mm-hmm. It's a bonkers ability. It's one of the strongest, because we got a lot of those little peppered, like, here's some extra mastery, or here's some extra crit, or here's some extra haste on like a couple different specs, right? But this one sticks out so much over any of the other ones. Like, what's 800 haste? It's like, 2%-ish. Like, you're gonna notice it a little bit, I guess, but not really. But you're gonna notice 20% leech. That's huge.
It's really noticeable in Mythic Plus, especially because, well, it affects the entire party. In Raid, it's a bit less because it's spread across.
Yep.
Still 1/4 is quite a lot.
Yeah. In any AoE situation, you can pop it on every AoE pull, basically, because you cast consumption on AoE pulls to hit everything, right? So it's going to be up for all those big, nasty, messy pulls. Or you can time it to be like in the middle of the pull when things get out of hand. Yeah, it's a really, really, really strong one. For sure. And I guess the last little bit before we move on to the mid-show break and then start talking stats and nitty-gritty is any tomfoolery or bugs or broken pieces that are hopefully getting fixed in 7.2.5 or not in a dress that you want to bring up? Like, what's on the horizon for Blood DK in the bug department? Either of you have anything?
Well, one thing that's somewhat noticeable is if you have the legendary shoulders, which are, in my opinion, the best legendary at the moment, and many people would agree, maybe not everyone. But it gives you stacks when you use Blood Boil. However, if you use 2 Blood Boils in a row, it often doesn't record the second one. So you would kind of have to spread out your Blood Boils, especially like on the pool. You don't want to Blood Boil twice in a row, because you only will get 1 stack instead of 2. So that's one thing that I would like to get fixed.
Ew.
Yeah, it seems to have 1 second internal cooldown or something.
Yeah, something like this. With Bloodlust, you get way lower than 1 second global cooldown, so...
Yeah, and something else that would make it so we don't need the Glyph of Wraithwalk, please. Don't let us get stuck on pebbles.
Yeah, that's the... I talk about this in the BTS podcast, is that I compared it... It's King Leoric from Diablo 3 or Here's the Storm. Wraithwalk, that's what it is. It literally is the exact same thing. He lifts himself up, he holds his weapon over his shoulder, and he floats. But he passes through because he's a Wraith. He has no collision. Which, I guess there could be problems with, like, giving you no collision, because then you could, like, exploit locations in the world map or something, obviously. But there should have, like, you shouldn't collide on the ground with where your feet aren't on the ground anymore.
Yeah, it's the same bug as Levitate. It's just been in the game since vanilla. I don't know if that's gonna like get fixed anytime soon.
Right.
Or just make it a buff so we don't have to channel it. Like the silence is, ugh. That's really...
Yeah, the silence is awkward. Because no other... I mean, it's unique, quote-unquote. I mean, monks can't do anything when they're rolling. Or when they're cheat
the roll is over really quickly, though.
Correct. But you're in a 3-second mobility silence.
Or 6 if spect.
Or 6. So, yeah... They probably could be a little more lenient on that, so you could actually do things during it. At least for tanks, because locking yourself out of doing anything and self-silencing is not very feasible in a lot of situations. So, yeah. But anything else on the first half of the show here that we may have skipped before we move on? I think we're good.
I think we missed the racials, right?
Yeah, if you want to play a Blood DK, obviously go Worgen or Goblin because they have mobility spells.
Yeah, it actually helps.
It's true.
Yeah.
Rocket Jump and Dark Flight. Do it. But
however, I would say go Blood Elf because Arcane Torrent. Holy shit.
Yep. Arcane Torrent Priest. How much RP does it give you?
15.
Yeah, 15.
15?
No, 20. 20.
Is it 20?
Is it 20?
Good lord.
Yeah, it's 20.
That's way too good.
It's like half a Death Strike, just like that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
really. I mean, it is how much, and Heart Strike gives you 20. So yeah, you could. That's the. I'm making that's triple Death Strike right there, technically, in a few globals. So, yep. Roll a gnome for permanent bench. Wow, whoa, 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 whoa. But yeah, you could. Yeah, Worgen for Dark Flight and Goblin for Rocket Jump if you need mobility. I don't know. You probably feel really dirty playing a Goblin Death Knight. We're gonna be pretty okay though. They're just not female Worgen until they fix them. They look terrible.
But then you have to go Alliance, and that's not gonna happen.
Whoa!
Oh, you just alienated half your viewers.
Yeah. Have to go Alliance. Goodness. That's definitely true. All right. Well, with that all out of the way, we can move on to the second half of the show. Plug a few things here real quick before we get into everything else during the middle. But again, of course, if you're just tuning in now, or to make sure that I cover my bases and thank all the patrons that are supporting the show, making sure this keeps going. But again, another big shout out to the assistant producers and their incredible, generous support to keep the show rolling forward, of course. So Thorlefulz, Ludovicus, Taislin, R4, Dalthier, and Quinn, thank you very much for keeping the show rolling and helping me out in the final producers chat and Discord and whatnot. But if you want more podcasts overall, up to 4 more a month, you get the 4 on YouTube or iTunes or Stitcher Radio, I think that right here. But you can get more on Patreon. These are made for patrons. There's currently 16. I make one of these per show. It's sort of like a unscripted behind the scenes building of the blocks here. But we had a triple guest show for the Blood DK one. We actually were joined by Fisky. Skulls was supposed to be here, but he's under the weather. But you can go through here. There's Nano and Corjo for Arms and Fury. There's Babs and Panda for the Windwalker Monk show. Here's me and Preacher for almost 2 hours. That was a long one. There's the Guardian Druid show if you want to do that, or Feral Druids, or Resto Druids, or Balance Druids, or Vengeance Demon Hunter. They keep going and going and going. Again, there's 16 of these things. You can all check those out on Patreon. Just hit the play button if you're eligible. They're locked behind one of the tiers, but of course, you get 4 or so a month. So if you want to support the show in a more physical means, of course, you can do that, like going over to our Design by Humans official apparel shop. I still have a whole lot of other things I want to add to this in the realm of new art from new artists, but the support for the show sort of funnels me back around to work with artists like Fabelina and Tutron to build these designs. This is I need more of these. Go get the Final Blame shirts and take them to BlizzCon and go find that silly Sparkle Dragon for all of your balancing problems. Right here is a good one. The commemorative shirts, of course, for the World First, the Method ones and the Exorcist ones. We'll keep making these. I like the new one we did for Gul'dan. It's our first new style. It's not like a montage shot, but it's a very stylized Illidan and Gul'dan and Exploding Skull. Really cool. But all the different types of things on the side here, of course. And again, if you missed the shows, you can, of course, find them all on my YouTube channel. Linked down below. Or if you're watching on YouTube right now, hi, YouTube. But if you want to watch the audio only, or listen to the audio only, rather, you can go find the show on Stitcher, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Just look for FinalBossTV, and you can do the audio-only versions of all the shows. Those are listed all there. Or you can go back and watch the VODs, the side content, the past shows. It goes all the way back. They're organized in years. So you can go back all the way to 2013 to really old ones. Derry actually just posted on Twitter that she was looking for some resources. And she linked my episode 1 on Twitter recently with Sko and Slootbag. It's pretty bad. It's funny to see how far the show has come. But if you're interested in a time capsule, there's 141 other episodes you can go watch. And all the side shows and the BlizzCon shows, all the good stuff too. And if you are new to any of the classes right now, check out the channel guide. that I put together. This is going to be a resource that'll hopefully be ported over to my website, just at FinalBoss.tv, but everyone's always wondering, where are all these Discord links to join the different Discord channels? They're all right here on my channel guide. So all the different, the 2 Demon Hunter ones, there's Acarus right there, there's Tank Chat General Hospital, there's my Discord. You can join any of them right here. Just hover over the icon, and then boop, there's the link. You can jump on there. You can download Discord right here. That's where a lot of information gets developed for all the different WoW communities out there. And of course, I've got some extra resources here on the side. If you want to go jump on those, feel free. But that's enough out of me. Let's talk about stats. But first, I move this down here. Mage Tower Challenge is a thing. How'd you guys do the High Lord's Return? I assume you both have finally did it after it was nerfed a bajillion times because tanks were funny, but have you both tackled
I tried it like 6 times before the nerfs, and then I thought, I'm not going to spend my Arcano Crystal shards on this.
Yeah, right?
So I just waited until after the nerfs, and then I did it in like 10 tries.
Nice.
I actually spent about 120 pulls pre-nerf, I managed to get it to 1%, and then Corvus died. So that was that. But I actually managed to get it. I think it was the second week of Midshow pre the big nerfs, in around 80 more pulls. So that was fun.
There is something really awkward about the Mage Tower challenges, and they just really missed the ball with the tank balance for the DPS portion of the tank balance. Because I did Enhancement in 5 pulls. I did Havoc in like 12 or 13 pulls. Those only 2 I've done so far. But every tank I talk to, it's like dozens or upwards of 100 plus. That's really punishing. I mean, it's supposed to be difficult, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main problem is that it doesn't actually reward you basically for tanking well.
Right.
It's just 100% positioning properly, getting your DPS cooldowns in order, and like making sure that the fucking Demon Hunter doesn't stand in the fire. Which,
yeah.
I mean,
it's kind of like raiding.
It's kind of like a bit like LFR, I guess, but it doesn't feel like you get rewarded for playing tank well. But that's maybe just me.
Like, the only tank port I think was phase 1, like where you could position yourself and you could pretty much skill the entire first phase. But then when you get to Hyler Cruz, like kill him before his annihilates kill you. That was it.
It's just damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, Velen as well, 10-10 healer. He's like the most powerful priest in the lore, and he just like poops out these bubbles for you, these little orbs. That's all he does.
Well, actually, he does significant DPS if you grip the first boss onto Velen. He could pretty much almost solo him.
So he does damage as a healer, which is another problem we've been having in Legion.
Yeah.
Great. Even the NPCs don't do it right. All right, good, perfect. Beautiful. Beautiful. Sort of a follow-up then. Which artifact skin now for Blood is your favorite? Thorley, what's yours? What's your favorite skin?
I admit that I transmogged mine away from the skins. Sorry.
Ah!
But my favorite one is the default one in the blue color. That's my favorite. I don't like the scythe, and it's all a bit too much on the nose, I think. Like.
Karu, what about you? What skin do you like the most?
Well, I can also admit that I'll transmog it away. I'm running with the Demise from Naxxramas with tier 3. But if I were to choose, I've used the Scythe quite a lot, the blue one, which you get for Mythic plus 15. And that just fits the tier 3 Dreadnought so perfectly.
True. Sounds good. That's on the Monk show recently, both monks were like, what skins? They just do the hidden wraps so they don't have weapon at all. So that is a thing here and there. I think Mass, our main tank, got the Werebear Guardian Druid, which you have to wear. You have to be the Man-Bear Druid. You have to be that. And then he just got his Prot Warrior one. And the flail's cool. It's all right. It's kind of wonky, but it looks nice. But that aside, now we can talk about stats. So what do Blood DKs care about for stats, and what have you guys figured out for that kind of priority that players should aim for? Is anything that changing in 7.2.5? Is it just haste all day?
No, as you mentioned, there's a feel-good spot for DKs, and I personally, like, this is very different from what you're doing in game and what you feel like, but I would say 30% is a good point of haste where you can start looking into the other stats a bit more.
Okay.
I would say, like, it depends a bit on your playstyle. The main benefit of haste is, like, there are two main benefits of haste. One is that you get, of course, more runes and more runic power, and this scales a bit quicker because you have the mirror rend buff that you maintain. So extra runes directly translate into more hard strike, which is, like, it scales quickly on how much extra runic power you get. But the second main benefit is that it lowers your global cooldown, which, of course, from WoD to Legion, we got an increase in global cooldown from 1 to 1.5 seconds. And yeah, it does help a lot to get the global cooldown a bit more down to 1 second or below, because in the end you're still a reactive tank spec. So if you can't react on time, if you're in the middle of a global when you get, like, nuked, you must be able to get the death strike on the next global, otherwise you just die. So having haste is very important for that purpose.
It also lowers the cooldown on Blood Boil.
Yeah,
that's true. How much rune regeneration, like, what's the math on rune regeneration rates for, like, every 10% haste is how much faster rune cooldown? Because there's...
It is, I would post it in the chat. Basically it scales linearly.
Okay. Right. Because the 30% feel good would give you a 1.2 global, but then how does that affect?
This is the rune regeneration calculation.
10 seconds divided by 1 plus haste percentage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the same factor for your global cooldown. So, for example, if you have 1.5 second global cooldown with 50% haste, you have 1 plus 50% is, and 50%, you would have exactly 1 second global cooldown.
Right.
And this also means that, in general, the amount of runes that you get per global doesn't really change much per haste, because the more haste you get, the more runes you get, but also the more globals you get. So in the end, it stays kind of the same.
It smooths it out. It keeps it even, so you're not having... Because that was always the trouble back in MoP, when all the different runes had different recharges based on when you use them. So it was always like this juggling effect, which I guess that's a bonus now of that the rune system is just runes, so that it's a more predictable, like controllable. So, okay. Why is everyone talking about my TV? So where do other stats fall into play there? Because I know that the question that brought up is how does mastery, or how much is mastery valued for blood? And the facepalm is right there. That's fair.
Yeah, like our mastery, what it does pretty much is it gives us more absorb on the blood shield and a bit of attack power. And as every blood DK has noticed, blood shield is not a thing. Like, it's gone within the next hit you take.
Yeah. It's just like a passive, small physical shield block, basically.
Yeah, man. It's
not very strong.
No, it's way down the priority list.
Okay. So, like, if you have a haste at the top, where do verse and crit? You just fiddle at the middle, or
first is actually pretty good for us, because it not only gives the damage reduction part of it, but it also increases the healing of Death Strike. And because our Death Strike heals based on damage taken, if you increase your versatility, if you increase that heal, it increases the relative amount of heal you do as well. So first is actually quite strong for us in that regard. And of course it gives DPS as well, which is pretty nice.
Right.
And crit is basically pretty awful defensively.
Mm.
We have a golden trait that gives us a chance to get increased absorption from Bone Shield, depending on our critical strike chance. But this is also sort of a meme. It comes down to slightly less than 1% per 10% crit you have, and you need quite a lot of crit rating to get that.
Yeah.
So
skeletal shattering seems pretty weak. Yeah.
So crit defensively isn't that good. So generally, my advice would be to go haste first, and then crit or mastery doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I would agree on that, except for if you know that you can survive anything, if you're overgearing content and you want to push your DPS, I would take crit over verse just for the DPS side of things. Okay. But then you really need to know that you're not going to die of other things, because you don't do any DPS if you're dead.
Right. Okay. And there's, well, crit is interesting to think about for 725, because I don't know if you're going to, if any of the legendaries would change that. I don't know. This is a DPS thing, brain talking for a moment, but the Enhancement Shaman Council has been working for like 2 to 3 weeks nonstop. Every day I refresh Skype to hundreds of messages to these incredibly smart nerds figuring out, because with all the new legendaries being brought in and the new tier bonuses being brought in, and how my spec has changed and how all the different, echelons of things are moving around for different DPS specs, there are different relic legendary combinations that change stat priorities. It's like we're having a expansion in the middle of an expansion when it comes to like your spec inner balance. I don't know if it affects tanks the same way, but for me it does, where it's a nightmare, obviously, because if you get pigeonholed into one side but you want to switch it to change over way more things now than just like, reforge button or changing out a legendary or two. So, because I don't know if that would be... Oh, go ahead.
I think about that, like, how our legendaries work is we can just flip them out the way we want. They don't change anything, pretty much. Like, the default one, like almost every DK uses, the shoulders, and that's just the more haste you have, the more blood boils you get, the more stacks you get. So, and the others you can just pick and choose from anything, and it doesn't change our playstyle that much or stat priorities either.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing about the set bonus is that it gives you a bunch of flat versatility. So I'm kind of curious how that will work out, because you also get the concordance proc, of course, and with Vanta's runes you get even more versatility. Like eventually, maybe you're gonna get to the point where stacking more versatility just for the basically multiplicative effect of the damage reduction portion might become quite powerful. Or maybe it goes the other way, where you say you get so much versatility that getting like more of it on your gear starts becoming less valuable. We're gonna kind of have to see how that works out.
Right. Yeah, you're getting... That's the next point to bring up, is the set bonuses, right? So you're sitting in tier 19 right now, which the Dreadworm battle plate is just Heart Strike and Mirror End generate 10% more runic power. Which...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty much our old decaying rapid decomposition.
Oh, okay. The more RP on your main sort of builders. And then your 4 pieces, Death Strike has a 25% chance to generate a rune. Which, when they removed and changed how rune interactions worked, this is just your spender that costs runic power has a quarter chance to give you back runes. I guess these both seem pretty smooth, straightforward, not a whole lot of crazy interaction with tier 19 right now.
It's pretty good,
no.
Especially with like the bracers. Actually, you kind of start to run into the issue that you become GCD locked, because the bracers basically we'll go over the legendary soon, I guess. The bracers basically always trigger 100% of the time if you have at least one versatility rating on your gear. So you get very low cost death strikes, and you get the increased chance for the refunds, and then you get the increased runic power gain from the 2-piece. It's possible that you kind of get flooded with resources at this point, which is also why like reducing the global cooldown with haste is pretty nice. Just to be able to spend more.
And I'm not a big fan of this RNG chance, because I've had several pulls on progress where Deathstrike just doesn't give me a rune when I need it, and it gives me when I'm GCD locked.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say the 2-piece is just a feel-good thing, like it makes life easier, and the 4-piece, it can make your life easier and can just be an annoyance.
Right. Yeah, there's... Healers and tanks have that, where procs and things you can't rely on always sort of get you in the end. Like, they feel great when it works and it lines up and it happens, but sometimes when it just, like, happens, we don't need it. You're just like, oh, okay. Because you can't react to it. It doesn't really do anything. But that is changing with your tier 20 on the horizon here, which your Grave Warden Armaments is your tier 20. So your 2 pieces at Blood Boil grants you Grave Warden. Just a passive buff for 10 seconds, which increases your versatility by 2,500, just flatly. And then your 4 pieces at Wild Grave Warden is active. The cost of Deathstrike is reduced by 5 runic power. So what have either of you really done much with trying to figure out how this works? Because there's really not a lot of, it just kind of exists. And Thorlefulz, you can go back to you because you brought up the versatility thing.
Yeah, I think that the versatility from the 2 pieces is quite powerful, actually, and we will see how it works out, because I'm kind of wondering if this becomes a mandatory 2-piece, 4-piece maybe in the next tier after this, because getting this versatility just free on your gear when versatility is much better than the main stats generally on gear from item levels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of probably looking at 2-piece, 4-piece in the next tier already. But for the 4-piece, that's kind of nice because it synergizes with Ossuary, and right now it's sort of in the open still, but it seems that the bracers do not take into account the reduced costs from the 4-piece, so they refund you as if you still spent 40 instead of 35. And well, other than that, basically, because Deathstrike is your main survivability and DPS button, just being able to press it more, it's just pretty nice. And it gives more than the 4-piece for tier 19 on average. So yeah, all around, pretty nice set.
Yeah,
and as you have the Grave Warden buff up all the time, it's just a flat stat buff pretty much.
Yeah, it is. And the note I had put down here is just getting more versatility after having Concordance, and Concordance was recently just buffed. And for DPS, the doubling of the base of Concordance was okay, and the 300 per point versus 200 per point is also okay. It's very small overall. Each point gives you roughly 1.5k DPS increase. We're already doing over 1 million, so it really doesn't contribute to a whole lot unless it lines up, stars align kind of thing. But the tank buff and giving you more versatility and the RPPM chance was increased. That's where it really comes down to that was a huge tank buff, not only in damage but also the flat mitigation coming in.
Yeah, versatility is just all around pretty good stat for us, so
right.
Maybe we get more use out of Concordance than even the other tanks.
And then they're giving Blood DK another 2.5k. There's some talk in chat about it. Is it 2k now or 2.5k? Regardless, even if it gets nerfed to 2k, it's still a ton of free mitigation.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, it's better than a free Vantus rune.
Right. Do you have, I'm going to bring it up on screen here so we can talk about it. The set looks really nice too. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about the actual look of the set. Because it's based on Black Temple, and obviously we didn't have DKs in Black Temple, so they're just giving you a brand new set here.
Well, it just falls in the category.
Fan of the helmet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a fan of the helmet.
But the rest of it looks pretty good. It kind of reminds me, especially the shoulders remind me of the Acros starter set, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I was about to say it's pretty much the beginner set with skulls.
Oh, if he kind of yeah. Torley is saying he doesn't know about the helm, but that's because he plays a Tauren.
Yeah,
And it looks really bad on a Tauren, but I'm looking at a female Blood Elf right here, and it looks just fine. I always bring this up when it's this, like, hooded, masked thing, but you look like a judge from Final Fantasy. In a way. Yeah. It just has that.
I like the Mythic set, though. The Mythic set could probably have some nice variation if you can mix some other gear into it.
Which, they're all very similar. Is the Mythic the dark blue?
No, it has a few spikes, like always. When you get the higher into the Mythic progression, you get spikes and bigger things.
Oh, it doesn't load. All we're looking at is... oh, there it goes. Oh, it's the purple. Is it the purple? All the spiky bits on like the... Yeah, okay. It might be because there's the purple and then there's the green. Because they got the one for PvP as well. The super PvP one. The ranked.
New PvP Legion, like season set looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think you're getting the... I found the PvP set here, though. It's the same model as the Mythic set.
Is it? I thought they had different shoulders. Maybe I'm...
No, they have the same shoulders. Let me just...
Yeah, because we have all 5 of them here. I'm looking at... This is on the WoWDB. The WoW MMO Champions WoWDB model viewer as a post on the top of the page. Yeah, the Mythic is not there. Interesting.
Yeah, I linked it on Skype, the PvP one at least, and that's the same model that Mythic will have.
Yeah, that's the one that I meant. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's very different than what we have built in here, yeah. That's very different. Huh, yeah, so the 3D model doesn't have a build for this to look at. Interesting. Yeah, that's super different. That's very cool. Yeah, I'm looking at the 3D ones because you rotate and looking around, but these are, I guess, these are all the base ones. They're not the Mythic only versions. Interesting. It doesn't have as much. I don't know. Blizzard has this weird thing with these huge belt buckles that like stick off your waist that just look a little ridiculous.
I don't like that much. Kind of reminds me of Throne of Thunder belts that looked ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just flailing in the air.
Yeah. It actually is like not even connected. I'm looking at it on the female belt, which it could of course change, but it's like floating on above her waist. I don't know. But on a male, where's the male Tauren here? I mean, it's sad that Tauren have the helms just cut funny.
Yeah. I got pretty much called out for having a shit transmog earlier in the Discord. Like,
oh, no.
I'm trying. It's hard.
Just get the Dreadnought and they can't complain.
Does it look any better on the female Tauren? I particularly like female Tauren way more than the male Tauren. It's still not great on the helmet there, but yeah. Yeah, floating belt indeed. But it looks like a good set. I guess the only thing about it is like there's no, because some of the specs, a lot of the new bonuses have like the whole stack mechanic, and then you react to something, or you just kind of rotate differently. It might change the rotation a little bit or priority wise. But yeah, this one is just, it gives you a passive buff when you blood boil. That should be up all the time, which has some interplay to make sure you obviously have... Does blood boil have to hit anything, or just casting it gives you Grave Warden?
I believe it has to hit. I'm not sure about that, because it has the same wording as the shoulders, and the shoulders actually has to hit something in order to activate.
Oh. Huh. So you can't just, that's what I was wondering. Can you just like, can you blood boil before you engage and it gives you the buff?
No, that's the same with the shoulders. If you have stacks and then you pull a boss, the stacks are removed. Same with any runic power you have, it just gets down to 0.
Okay.
It actually drops to 20. You can keep 20.
Oh, you can? Damn.
I just found out myself, actually. I was talking about Unholy earlier. But yeah, apparently you can keep 20 runic power in the pool. Well,
yeah, that just seems... It's odd, though, because every time we pull to reset for Bloodlust, I lose all my runic power.
Maybe it's different for Unholy compared to Blood.
Might be.
The DPS specs can keep it, but the blood it won't. It bottoms you out. That seems weird. I guess the next little port here, we talked about legendaries a lot earlier. Like we split that sort of up So, because we went over the legendary trinket quite a bit earlier on, but I guess trinkets in general, are there any big trinkets you want to give a nod to? Because let's face it, the tanking trinkets outside of Gul'dan trinket for shenanigans, the Infernal Contract, the tanking trinkets in Nighthold were
pretty shit.
Yeah, no, don't take them.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, they were pretty bad. Yeah, they were pretty bad.
Even Blizzard came out and said that the tank trinkets were awful.
But how are the tomb tank trinkets though? Any big change?
Some of them look pretty interesting. Like I talked a little bit about the Cosmic Sliver before.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be interesting if you have it. It's definitely going to change a little bit the way you play. The other ones, like you get the damage one with the leech attached. That's the main reason I'm excited for that one, is that people can finally stop asking in the Discord chat whether Draught of Souls is any good for us, because no, it's not. Just wear that thing instead. And well,
wait.
And also
Draught of Souls for Blood DK? What?
You would be surprised. People say, well, it has haste on it, must be good for us, right? Even though it does shit DPS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a haste static will give you more.
Yeah. What did you have to add on that, Koro? Go ahead.
Well, it depends on how the tanking also evolves, because right now you don't need a tank trinket, so to say. Like, there's actually no encounter where a tank trinket will outperform a DPS trinket if you know and have info about the fight. But if that changes, like, you could, just have a trinket like the exoskeleton from Scorpion, but instead of stamina, it gave strength. I would actually, I would probably use it on sometimes.
You're talking about Shard of Rockmora.
Oh yeah, that. Actually, I used that sometime in the Emerald Nightmare just because it was some damage reduction when we didn't have anything else.
Well, you're all talking about all the versatility you're going to be stacking. Isn't there that, what's that versatility trinket from Nightmare that plops the blob next to you that gives you more verse randomly that has pretty good uptime?
Goblet of the Nightmare or something.
Just stack more verse.
Yeah, as soon as that dropped, it was just a godsend pretty much, because the uptime, if you could keep track of the blobs, because sometimes you could pop 3 at the same time, and you could just kite the blobs and keep a 30-second versatility buff at the same time.
Oh god, that's they have to actually smash into you to give you the buff. So if you, okay, that's something.
But most trinkets are a bit disappointing. Indeed, in the chat, Arcano was called out. Arcano is probably one of the best trinkets for us. Same with Dark Moon Deck Immortality. Please don't die. Are you alive still? Oh dear.
I've been fighting off a bit of a cold, and now this is where we at. Goodness.
Maybe you need some survivability in real life.
That's for sure.
Anyway.
All right, we're back though.
Yeah, most of the good trinkets are like the stat sticks and memento, stuff like this. Foci is nerfed for us, so that sucks. Chrono Shard is okay.
But what? There's not a trinket that was brought up. There was something you were talking about it. You said Chrono Shard. But that has like 1 RPPM. Is that not bad for tanks?
It's not great, but at the same time, haste is pretty good for us.
Okay.
It gives mobility also. Movement speed,
And it actually happened quite often. Like, this has happened more often than not, that I get back-to-back procs on Chrono Shard, and I don't know why, but it seems to be... it seems to happen a lot. So what I've seen, it procs more than Memento when no one dies.
That's still a problem with all of those proc. I mean, chat brought up Memento, is that the Nighthold trinkets that are DPS oriented that tanks were looking at earlier on, like the Foci and stuff like that. The next step, they cut all the RPPMs and the proc rates of the DPS trinkets for tanks, so you couldn't even use them. Have they done the same thing for the DPS trinkets in Tomb though?
I believe
it looks
so.
Like, it looks like they did. Oh well.
So, but if they're a good tank trinkets,
if they're a good tanking trinkets, then it's not necessary to roll for them.
Right.
Exactly.
So we'll see if that works out. I know there's like it's like 4 or 5 that's being worked out for enhancement. So I wonder, are there that many for tanks as well? Is that much of a diversity, or is there like 3 again or 2 or whatever it was in Nighthold?
Let me look it up, actually. I'm kind of curious about the armor proc one as well. That gives you like fire reflect.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to look at the uptimes, but especially in Mythic Plus, armor proc is okay. Like most of the damage you take is physical, and if the fire reflect proc is significant DPS, then I can see people wearing that one for Mythic Plus at least. That sounds kind of nice.
Yeah, that was the one I was actually thinking of. You said armor. It's the Nerubian Husk trinket, which I believe you can only get out of your Mythic Plus box, though, because it comes from...
No, I'm talking about the new one from Tomb.
Oh, yeah, different one.
Yeah, the February's Carapace.
Yeah, I'm talking about that. Yeah, the Nerubian Husk is a different one, because you brought up armor trinkets. Are armor trinkets, because like Darkmoon Card is still in the playbook a little bit. Are those worth it for Blood?
Darkmoon Card is good. Like, armor is pretty good for us, and Darkmoon Card, because it's always active, even though sometimes the buff is strong and sometimes it's weak.
Okay.
The fact that it's always active makes it just very reliable, and yeah, it's just way better damage mitigation wise compared to pretty much any absorb trinket that you can get your hands on. Even Infernal Contract, if you get like a 10 million shield, it sounds like a lot, but it has a 1.5 minute cooldown.
Right.
And if you get just on average 10% damage reduction on all physical attacks, in that on 1.5 minutes, it's going to end up being way more.
Okay.
Yeah, also a trinket I would like to highlight is the Unbridled Fury from Ursoc. Like the use effect on that is like the dream for DK. It gives health and armor. Too bad the stat on it is crit.
Yeah, people unfairly like judge Unbridled Fury very low. People say it's a meme, but I think as far as on-use effects go, it's probably one of the best on-use defensive trinkets that you can have at the moment, at least for Blood DK.
And also it lasts for 30 seconds. That's really long for an unused trinket.
Yeah, it's like that mini, it's the last stand trinket, because you can combine that with the other health benefits you have. I mean, we opened the show with asking Koru how much HP he's randomly gotten. I don't know if that trinket was part of it, but there's... If a trinket gives you HP, though, would that multiply with your other HP multipliers? Like, just...
Yeah, it does.
Gets all smooshed in... Okay. Gets all smooshed in there. But... I guess outside of that, that'll lead us into talents. And I don't know if the two of you would have different opinions on talents right now.
I doubt it. Talents are pretty much cookie cutter, unfortunately.
Well, the only thing that I still praise is, that I hate is that Purgatory is still a thing. It was fixed in 7.1.5 though to not just insta-give you if you were healed to 100 health over Purgatory and then hit again.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like it doesn't fit the current game at all.
I disagree. I guess we do have a point where we disagree on.
There you go. Purgatory was way too strong early on, and normally it's the talent you would take. At least it's made to be like the progression talent, because it's like a oopsie. It's like a oh crap moment, because that's the same thing that Last Resort for Vengeance has, but Last Resort was nerfed to like it's like a 6-minute cooldown or something like that. It's like once per fight, basically. But
Purgatory was nerfed at the same time. It
right.
became from 3 to 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4
but
minutes.
they fixed the functionality at the same time, so it's actually a buff because you don't want to proc it more than once anyway.
Okay.
And it actually reset on death now. It didn't do that before. You had the debuff even though you died.
Oh, that would be annoying. So, outside of Purgatory, then, where do talents go from there? Like, Koru, what do you spec for raids right now?
For raids, I would go for Blood Drinker in the first tier, Rapid Decomposition, Ossuary, Red Thirst, either March of the Dan or Tightening Grasp. It depends if I can slow anything. Like on Botanist Progress, I was actually good on the plants to have Tightening Grasp just to slow the flowers. Foul Bulwark or Rune Tap twice on 2 encounters, and then Blood Mirror.
It's pretty straightforward right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if Mark, interesting. I mean, it brought up the legendary ring giving you bulwark, so you would be able to take rune tap in that regard, right? If you used it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you would. I mean, Will of the Necropolis is garbage, so...
Is it?
I agree.
I mean, it looks like mathematically pretty strong, but I guess is it not? Doesn't save you enough if you're that low to actually keep you alive? Or I guess the whole point is never get that low, or...
Well, it kind of depends a little bit. The way it works is it only affects the damage below 35%. So
right.
It used to be if you were 100% HP and you get hit for 80 damage, then it would be like it would all get affected. But now only the part that brings you below 35% is actually affected.
Okay.
So if you look at just mathematically going from 100 to 0, it's like 15% effective HP increase.
Okay.
But Foul Bulwark gives this also, right? It's in the worst case scenario, you get Foul Bulwark, and you don't want to spend much time below 35% HP. Like as a DK, because we are so susceptible to burst damage, if you spend a lot of time below 50% of your HP, you're going to get one shot anyway. Like the talent is not going to save you in that case. You would rather have much more buffer and have like something that does something, a talent that does something for the entire fight.
Right.
Or the rune tap, which is very centralized, effective HP, basically. And Will of the Necropolis is just never good, basically. It's just shit talent.
And then I guess the other argument point I wanted to bring up was Blood Mirror versus Bone Storm. Because, like, thematically, Bone Storm is neat, but is it just like a numerical thing, or the fact that it can only last 10 seconds maximum? Like, where did Bone Storm go wrong? I guess you could use it for like Mythic Plus for like AoE packs, but
but go on.
The thing is, the foul battle about Bone Storm and Blood Mirror is in raids mostly you only have one target, the same, and Blood Mirror, if the boss is hitting you for quite a lot, Blood Mirror will do more damage, and Bone Storm, I think it needed 3 or more targets in order to just equal the damage Blood Mirror would do.
Oh wow!
And the healing on Bone Storm on one target is just it's not even worth mentioning. It's 20% of your health in 10 seconds.
If Bone Storm actually worked like Breath of Sindragosa for Blood DK, would that be so like a longer base cooldown, but you could keep it rolling for longer? If it kept eating runic power, 10 every second, but it kept going, would that be too strong, or would that actually bring Bone Storm up to more like a possible rotational play that would actually...
Yeah, it would depend very much on the tuning and the cost increase and like how it would actually go. I'm not sure that would have to they would probably increase the HP you get from it as well, because it would have to in single target also pretty much equal Death Strike healing. Otherwise, they would have to make it like the DPS option.
Right.
If they would make just remove the heal altogether and just make it the talent that you choose, if you want to give up survivability for DPS, I would be fine with that as well.
Okay.
But then it also has to do more damage than Death Strike, which right now it does not on single target, not even close to it.
Mm-hmm. Other talents, we talked about Blood Drinker a little bit earlier on as like the only option in your 15. Well, you're 56 technically because you're a Death Knight.
Yeah.
But there was a question that was brought up in my Discord about bloodworms.
Well, it used to be that Heartbreaker was actually pretty good. And they nerfed it by 33% the same time that they buffed Blood Drinker and Bloodworms, because everyone was using Heartbreak.
Oh, okay.
But Bloodworms is just shit, man. There's no way around it.
No, I agree.
It's been buffed so many times already, and somewhere in the alpha or beta, it even got a 300% damage buff, and it's still just not good. Blood Drinker is way more DPS, and Heartbreaker and Blood Drinker both end up being more healing. So yeah, it's just awkward.
It's also one of those, like, Bloodworms, it's the tooltip, if you drop below 50% health, your Bloodworm will immediately burst and heal you. You don't want to drop below 50% that often.
But if you do, you lose DPS from it as well, so...
Yeah, so it's... no.
It's a bit sad, because I like Bloodworms thematically, and they're part of, like, the class fantasy. If you think about Wrath of the Lich King, Blood DK already had Bloodworms, and...
Right.
But it's just not good. I don't even know if I would want it to be good, because it's also the way it's implemented now. It's kind of fire and forget, boring.
I would say if they remade it to be more like Wrath, then sure, it would be an option.
And then we talked about Heart of Ice earlier as the newcomer to the 57 tier. Rapid decomposition, though, it's super death and decay. I mean, you generate runic power in D&D, pretty strong. And then I gotta give a shout out to Satch in chat because he wanted to. Is there an honorable special mention for Spectral Deflection?
Yeah, Spectral Deflection is an interesting talent, because the way it's like, if you just look at it from outside, you would say, wow, this is super overpowered.
Sure.
It doubles your bone shield effect on heavy hits, which also benefits, by the way, from Rattle Gores, which make them kind of a little bit better. And both of the uses can proc Skeletal Shattering, so that makes crit a little bit better defensively.
Okay.
And the problem with it is that unless you basically use it for one big hit, if you use it on, let's say, Gul'dan, every melee hit he does triggers it. So your bone shield consumption goes through the roof. This is also where the swing timer of the boss comes in. And you end up spending a lot of your runes on Marrow Rend just to maintain blood, like bone shield. And in the end, your self-healing goes down. So it's kind of the thing that if you have to take it, you take it, but you would prefer not to take it. Like sometimes it's a loss over not having a talent at all, which is kind of awkward.
Yeah, so for instance, as you said, if you were used on Gul'dan, you would get less Death Strike, less Heart Strikes, less healing from yourself just to keep yourself alive. And the entire spec gets awkward. You just press Marrow Rend and never Heart Strike.
Yeah, because if every auto attack is consuming bone shield charges, and you want to keep Foul Bulwark stacked up, and of course you need to keep bone shield up all the time anyway for the haste gives you, and of course the damage reduction. I guess it's just a very big rotational change, yeah.
The other thing is that if you are using it, let's say, to mitigate one big hit, let's say, for example, in Tichondrius, if you're soaking the bats, then the other problem with it is that you spend a lot of runes maintaining Marrow Rend, but in a situation like this, if you want to absorb one big hit, you also want to take Rune Tap, which is also a rune cost. So you kind of start burning the candle at both sides, because you want to keep your runes for Rune Tap, but you want to spend your runes on Marrow Rend, because you cannot spend them on Heart Strike. If you have Spectral Deflection, then you take a lot of hits. So, I mean, it's like I said, you would use it if you have to use it, but you would prefer not to use it if you can avoid it at all.
You know, a lot of haste to sustain comes up, yeah. You had your 58s and 60. Not much was said here. You were just like, bam, Ossuary, bam, Red Thirst. So nothing else of note in here?
Well, Red Thirst is just so OP.
Yep, spending runic power will decrease the remaining cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 1 second per 6 runic power. So it's the warrior ability in their 100 down here on the left. I can't remember what it's called.
Anger Management.
Anger Management, yeah, their reduction cooldown. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, it is really good. Since Vampiric Blood is our main defensive cooldown, it's like this can reduce it by sometimes 50% of the cooldown. You can just remove it. That's really nice. And Tombstone is just bad. Mark of Blood is okay numerically, but Mark of Blood is once again like it's trickle healing, where our like weakness is burst. So you would rather have more uses of Vampiric Blood.
Okay. Yeah, Tombstone I was looking at back in beta as like a gameplay thing. And before they removed Soul Gorge, which is replaced by Heart of Ice, I thought like there was a neat thing with consuming your bone shields and consuming your blood plagues to have like a different rotational feel or style. But at the end of the day, it just didn't work to do much. And obviously Soul Gorge is gone in the patch, replaced by Heart of Ice. And then Tombstone is just not enough of a gain for a minute-long cooldown.
Well, there's some anti-synergy with Tombstone, like, because when you use Tombstone, you consume the Bone Shield charges.
Yep.
And if you have Foul Bulwark, that automatically loses your percentage health increase. So it kind of counteracts each other.
Yep.
And then
Also,
yeah,
if you pop it and you don't have 10 stacks, you lose your Ossuary buff, which gives more cost to Death Strike.
Right.
So it just works against each other.
Mm-hmm. Which we went into that a little bit on the BTS podcast. Well, a little bit. We went into the whole like bone and blood thematic feel of like what is a blood DK, and it's kind of got a little touch of necromancy, touch of blood bending from Avatar, but in World of Warcraft, at least so far, they haven't really nailed either of those down, because you can't do a spec that's based around your bone shield very much, like in fully, because then it cannibalizes itself, and then everything about like the blood side, like with the blood worms not being good, Mark of Blood is meh, and then again, Bone Storm again mathematically is bad. So Blood Mirror is fine, but that's because you're gaming boss mechanics, like putting it on Croesus and setting in his 10 million beam, right, to reflect damage back to him. Like you have to forcibly game that kind of mechanic. So, but at least there's a little bit of leeway here, mostly because of the Legendary Ring coming in. But
I do want to give one shout out to Tremble Before Me, which
sure,
because like people disregard this talent, but in Mythic Plus it has its uses. Certainly not in every dungeon, but like in BRH, for example, I would say Tremble Before Me is pretty good, because it allows you to interrupt things that are generally uninterruptible.
Yep.
And it's basically free. It procs Cephas as well, which is nice. And Tightening Grasp you generally use in Mythic Plus because of the slow when you need to kite, for example, like Necrotic. But Tremble Before Me is also fine. People generally just say, oh, Tremble Before Me, just kick it out the window and nobody uses it ever. But I think that's a bit short-sighted, personally.
I would also say Tremble Before Me was probably the reason I could actually do the Mage Tower challenge as early as I did, just because of the Arcane ads. You could just, they were feared, and it canceled their cast.
That's really good.
So it definitely has some uses, yeah.
I run Elemental Shaman a lot for Mythic Plus, and I've done a few with Blood DKs as the tank. And yeah, Tremble Before Me plus Earthquake is so much passive nonsensical CC that like they'll get feared for a moment, or they'll get knocked down for a moment, and then they get it back up and they get feared again. Like it's really controls big pack if you combined the two together. But yeah, Tremble Before Me's big thing is that you can, a lot of the big uninterruptible elites, because you can't push them or stun them, they get feared and they stop. Yeah. That's super good. Very, very niche, but that's a point of a talent, especially utility talent, is to be selected when you get actually use the best of it. So that makes sense.
One tier that we haven't really gone into is the Ossuary Blood Tap Anti-Magic Barrier tier.
Right.
I kind of want to bring up that I think Blood Tap in its current incarnation is like a misplaced talent. I think when you used it in Warlords of Draenor, because it gave you like runes on demand, and you needed runes on demand for the Death Strikes. But with the change from Death Strike cost being now runic power instead of runes, I think Blood Tap should also have changed. That it would use it would give you a burst of runic power on use, so that it competes a bit with Ossuary, which gives you just flat cost reduction on Death Strike, which in over a minute might give you the same amount, but this allows you to give you the burst that would make it an interesting design decision. I think that would kind of add some complexity as well, and maybe make a talent that's not passive be the best one for sure. Like that would be nice. And anti-magic barrier is just bad, so I kind of don't want to go into that.
I mean, it's a last stand only in the AMS bubble, so I'm sure there are some shenanigans again with more stacking health nonsense. But anti-magic shield has to, you know, you get 10 seconds of the health, but then what's
you
the
get
cooldown
you get the
in
health
AMS?
anyway, regardless of the AMS. So once
right.
AMS runs out, you still have the few seconds. But the biggest problem with it, I guess, maybe with tier 20 on the horizon, this changes. But ossuary, because it gives you the reduced cost and the increased maximum runic power, it allows you to bank 3 death strikes on a full runic power bar, which is important for something like Alluriel. If the Annihilate is happening, you want to have multiple uses of death strike ready, so you can death strike multiple times in a row when you take heavy burst damage. And without ossuary, because you don't have the maximum RP and the cost reduction, can only stack 2. So I tried anti-magic barrier as like for Alluriel to give me the extra HP, but it ended up not being as good just because banking multiple death strike is just better generally.
Yeah, that's probably what pulls ossuary way ahead, is just having more runic power available is very powerful versus the other 2 options, just because of how Blood DK plays. If there's going to be a bar or a talent row that affects runic power at all, but only 2 of them do, and one of them gives you more runic power, that really becomes a strong contender for the best talent in that row, because there's nothing else that really competes with having more of your spendable resource.
Exactly.
Yeah, that just comes down to a talent row discrepancy problem. Yeah. Yep. Anything else on talents, or I think it's nitty gritty time. We got about
maybe one or 2 mentions about Purgatory.
Because I think more Purgatory, more.
I think it's Sorry, I think people also people are generally very divided on the talents. Some people say it's basically always the best option. Some people say it's absolute shit and you should never use it. And I think people should be a bit more nuanced, because there are definitely situations, especially like I do High Mythic Plus. In High Mythic Plus, having ossuary or having Purgatory, is generally a benefit, because even though sometimes you end up maybe not using it the entire dungeon, my healer has the peace of mind that in the back of his head he knows if shit goes wrong, I at least have a few seconds to heal him back up. And he, like Meowchan, he's probably in the chat as well. He mentioned that it's a really big deal in Mythic Plus when it's the only healer. And on progress, of course, if you're 200 wipes deep into a boss, you don't want to be the cause of the wipe 201 just because you screwed up something. Like, even if it maybe only procs 1 in 10 times, that's maybe like 10% of your wipes that you can avoid just because of that. So there's at least some nuance there where I wouldn't say go always use it, and I wouldn't say never use it. So
it's just a really awkward tier to look at. But Koru, go for it. You have a rebuttal?
Yeah, the reason why I say never take it is me and my co-tank actually made some math about this. If we just compared, if we were to go full defensive in comparison to full offensive tanking while also being alive, our DPS would actually increase the raid's DPS more than a full raid of Vantus runes would. So that's about our damage increased the raid's DPS by 4 to 5% or so. So that's a 4 to 5% less of a fight, which will help everyone in a regard. Less mechanics, less healing, etc. Less things that can fuck up. And often when a tank fuck up in a raid environment, it's not a tank that dies, it's the raid that dies. So that's how Purgatory is not that useful in raiding progression. I can see the usefulness. I don't push that high Mythic Plus, so I can't really say for that. I'm mostly speaking for raiding and progress raiding. And Blood Mirror just encroaches. It can do I think it did on progress like 10% of my damage just standing in beams. So 10% of my damage, or a safety net that never actually procs if I communicate with my healers properly.
There's definitely a pro and con for either. I mean, they are thematically completely opposite talents. One is a small cooldown active where you just take damage and deal some more back to the tank. There's nothing defensive about it at all because you want to actually take more damage to deal damage back to the boss. Whereas Purgatory is just cauterize for Blood DK, right? It's just the you died technically, but you're not dead yet. Here's the lay on hands to save you from death. But where was that lay on hands 3 seconds ago? Right, so there is a trade-off there, because that's what I was just saying. This tier is so awkward because you have a cooldown to scumbag damage to do damage taken to do damage, a passive to save you once every 4 minutes, well, sometimes not save you, depending on how your healers react, and then runic power to damage and healing, but like super low healing and super low damage. So it's not a very weird tier for Blood DK to look at your 100s.
I think all of our talents could use some major shake-up, to be honest. Like, just completely rework the entire tree. Maybe that's a bit much to ask, but yeah.
Some of the talents look fine, but I think what Blizzard is finding out, and they've been doing it a lot lately with like Arms Warrior, for example, even with the Enhanced Shaman and a couple other specs in the 725, they've just moved talents to change up the hierarchy of that row. And that is helpful in so many ways. I mean, Shadow Priest got that treatment in 715. Frost Mage, like they're really fixing some of the hierarchy by moving talents around to other rows. And that might be what Frost, looking at Heart of Ice, what Blood DK might need is moving some things to different places.
I would say if Heart of Ice were to compare with Purgatory, I think that would be a more engaging tier to take, because like Purgatory, sure, I might need to soak something, and if we don't have an external, I can take it with Purgatory, or if I can keep Icebound Fortitude up longer. Like those are actually, you can compare those two. Here is more like, do I want to make damage or do I want a safety net?
Yeah, that's the trade-off is too polarizing. I would say it's way too different, and that becomes an awkward situation. But I think it's nitty-gritty time for a little bit. If chat has any questions they can bring up, of course we can answer those. But I just have the nitty-gritty here at the end of the show is the end game tanking hierarchy, not the balance or the meta, but the hierarchy, and sort of like where DK fits in. We've had a lot of like shines versus fall off. You brought up Star Augur quite a bit, but is Koru, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think Blood, or if it's getting it in 725, what does Blood need to move itself in the hierarchy and not be so like redheaded stepchild feeling in like the progression world? Like, do you think, what does it need pinboard?
Well, what we need is, well, if I could dream, rune tap on baseline, please, Blizzard, listen to me.
Right.
Otherwise, we need more damage, though, because right now we're at the bottom almost doing the damage, because that's important for progress as well. Like, sometimes you only the tank alive in order to kill the boss. But that we're getting that. But I think we need some more proactive things in order, because everything can't be reactive. Like, for Odin, how we went there, you wanted to run away from the boss to take the spear, but you couldn't heal yourself because you couldn't hit the boss.
Right.
So maybe something more proactive, like buff Icebound or something, I don't know.
That's the way they took away Death Coil from Blood a while ago, and you could Death Coil. You couldn't Death Coil yourself, but then you had like Lichbane or Lichbound or whatever. Lichborn. And you could Lichborn yourself to go undead, and then you Death Coil yourself. Yeah, that gameplay is gone. So, yeah.
I think that right now, like, since the trade from 7.2, because we kind of skipped over this, but we got 20% Death Strike healing as well as trade.
Sure.
And I think since that trade, we're pretty much on par defensively with the other tanks. Especially like in some, well, maybe once they nerf Druid a little bit, maybe. But we're not
this,
far
though.
behind them defensively. The reason that people just don't bring them like Blood DKs is because the damage is so crap, and they don't. The mobility is crap. They don't give much more than be on par. So I think when 7.2.5 comes out, we're gonna have quite a few people that are interested in bringing DKs. And I think we're gonna get more representation just from damage buff alone.
Yeah, I also want to bring, like, right now we run Guardian Druid Blood DK, and if I were to tank the demon within on Gul'dan, there's no reason for me, because we have a Guardian Druid, which is way better on taking the Soul Server. Like, we're not good at taking that. If you just put the two tanks next to each other, you would always take the Druid on Soul Server duty, because they have way more damage reduction. And it's absorption healing. We have to be healed, and yeah, we have one Ice One Fortitude.
On the other hand, I would say I would probably bring a DK always to take the bonds. Just because every time you take the bonds, you instantly heal yourself back to full. You don't even need a single heal from a healer.
Yeah, and you don't have to soak with anyone else. You can just solo soak them every time.
Exactly.
Oh, you just, because the bond break does so much damage, you just get back to Guldaddy and just Death Strike and you're back to full health?
Yeah, you can have Vampiric Blood for every other one as well. So
no, you can
it only
actually
deals
have
10 million. So
I actually have it up for every bond without the waste.
Just because of the Red Thirst talent there, you can see how good it is.
Yeah, Red Thirst seems really good. I mean, it's a really short cooldown overall. What's the cooldown on Vamp Blood anyway?
It's a 1.5 minute base.
Yeah, 90 seconds, yeah.
They actually nerfed Red Thirst. It used to be 2 seconds reduction per 10 runic power spent. They nerfed it to 1 per 6. But it's still just so good. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, I hope that works out for Blood DK, and that it's weird that that's how Legion sort of works with Blood DK, or in tank hierarchy in general, where like damage really comes into play a lot, which is strange, but that's an important part for sure. I mean, I have written down here the Seraphim problem, right? Like, because Guardian Druid, Brewmaster Monk, Prot Warrior, and Seraphim Prot Paladins all do so much damage. Vengeance and Blood was just left in the dust until the next point.
Until now.
Yeah.
But the thing is that all the other tanks also have some sort of trade-off that they can make. Like we mentioned this a bit in the BTS. Like you can spec Seraphim, you can spec like what's the Warrior one Devastator.
Devastator, yeah.
There's supposed to be DPS increases at the cost of survivability, but Blood DK doesn't have anything like this. There's no way to increase your DPS. If there's one thing that I would maybe consider to change the Blood kit a little bit, I wouldn't mind having a version of Rune Strike back, which is zero mitigation benefit, but just spends runic power to gain heavy DPS. That's probably one thing that if we would have it in our kit, it would flash us out a bit more. No pun intended.
Yeah, that's something I definitely.
It's kind of like Fracture for Vengeance Demon Hunters.
Absolutely. I mean, Fracture has a slight mitigation because Fracture will give you 2 lesser souls, which is fine.
Of course.
But it also hits like a truck. But you're trading those resources, that pain, for DPS instead of mitigation. So, yeah, Rune Strike could come back as a talent somewhere. That would be interesting. Because it's basically acting like Overpower. Parry, it was like parry resets gave you Rune Strike, something like that back in the day. Yeah. And that made crit stronger because parry is from crit. So, yeah. But it gives you the trade-off of Death Striking for damage or Rune Striking for actual damage versus healing with Death Strike, yeah.
And then also you brought up Star Augur there. Some niche mechanics come down with Blood DK. We chose to dual tank Star Augur just because we were not going to hit the enrage timer on Star Augur on phase 3. So we chose to play with 2 tanks. And in the Frost phase, you could just skip out the entire stack with the Grand Conjunction. Like you didn't have that awful combo. You could just take the Meteor, stay spread, then stack after Grand Conjunction.
Yeah,
So
because AMS prevents the debuff application of the meteor altogether.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
You get hit by the meteor, but you don't take the debuff, so that's like it's like clearing it by itself.
All right. There's a few. Oh yeah, Fisky was answering them. Yeah, expected to get a sword, got an axe. Left disappointed about the whole that you got an axe as your. I don't want to like go into spoiler territory real here, so I'll be vague for those that don't want spoilers about the lore of the game. But the axe and the connection with your artifact weapon, right? So the Maw of the Damned is going to play. Not the character, not like yours will, but I think the overarching plot will play an interesting part of the Kil'jaeden fight coming up.
Yeah,
which
because
is
for the people who do not know, the Maw of the Damned artifact weapon was actually forged lore-wise, specifically to defeat Kil'jaeden.
Defeat him, yeah.
So,
yeah, I wonder.
There's rumors, I'm not confirming anything, that there might be a one-liner if you have a Blood DK in the fight.
Oh! Rumors? That'd be neat. But who has a Blood DK in the fight anyway? I mean, we're talking. You're the only two that play the spec, right? Jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, like Destro Warlocks.
Oh gosh. Well, Destruction Warlocks are looking spicy.
Yeah,
in the patch.
They're looking spicy, but right now, Affliction. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you don't play Affliction Master Race right now, of course. Oh gosh, yeah. If Blizzard introduced a cloak with a high collar, would you transmog it for Dracula cosplay? Bovine Dracula? Could. I don't know. Anything else that was coming up in chat here? Yeah, there's some RP with the Maw of the Damned in the Kil'jaeden fight. I mean, is there RP? We don't know yet. I mean, the people are data mining. There's strings of all this dialogue, so we'll have to wait and see what transfers to live. But wait, there's a new patch notes that came out 10 minutes ago. No,
are you serious?
That's too new. That's too fresh. Breaking news. Is there actually a patch right now? There's some blue posts, but I don't think there's actually a patch right now. New legendary item sources. There'll all be new drops in the existing system. We knew that. They're not going to come from nether shards. We also knew that in a blue post. And they will not be obtainable via relinquished tokens. Yeah. That's all I think. Oh, there's Kil'jaeden encounter intro stuff. That's what's coming up. Developer interview, new tech. Huh. Okay.
Nothing DK? Okay.
Right.
Don't care.
Yeah, there's something for wow. We're making sure we're not going to miss anything that comes up on the show live. But yeah, there was another little developer interview. There's another one coming out. I think they did a lot of these little sparse interviews, so there should be something coming out the next couple of days with another one. So, I mean, this is a new post, so I didn't see this before. But the developer interviews that come out over the next couple of days, we'll have to wait and see if any of their nuggets come to light. Because Sleuthbag had one, Vanian EU just had one. There's, I think Bellular has one, and there's one other that might come out. Did Wowhead get one? I don't know. There's a few of these that just randomly spit out a bunch of dev interviews, so we'll wait and see that. But do either of you, Koru, you want to leave some words of wisdom to your fellow Blood DKs out there? Any little tidbits?
Yeah, I would recommend speak more to your healers. Like, do communicate. Be certain when you're gonna use your externals to help out. Like, Blood DKs might be the roller coaster, but if you use your externals right, you might just be able to do whatever job you might have to do.
Torle, how about you, sir? You got anything for the Blood DKs out there?
Yeah, I say just skip raiding entirely and I'll go Mythic Plus. It's the more superior play style.
Wow.
No, don't.
Okay.
Don't do it. Just no, don't. Well, I think that's gonna do it for us. I think it's time to hit this crazy little button here, and there we go. So thank you all for tuning in to episode number 142, Legion Blood DK episode. Next week is Holy Paladins. And then once we lock down the Holy Paladins show next Sunday, there will be a new vote on Twitter. So you can go follow me and the show on Twitter. Links down below in the description box or right here on Twitch if you want to vote on the next 4 shows that are coming up. There's only so many left, and we're going to be in the 7.2.5 area, so we'll have no more future casting to do. We'll just be in the patch. And then if you haven't heard the update, there's going to be, once we finish with like the first pass of Legion shows, there will be a repeat where we'll go back through all the other specs again, because we'll probably be in Argus for quite some time to catch up. But every single show and that second pass will all be split apart. So every single spec gets their own show. So all 3 Warlock specs, all 3 Rogues, all 3 Hunters, all that stuff, all split apart. But we have Unholy and Frost in the future still. Like, those will be together for now, but then they'll be split apart in the Argus junket, essentially. But again, if you've missed any of the show, you can go check it out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, or of course on YouTube. YouTube goes up like 24 hours after the main show is live on Sunday. But around the table real quick here to the guests on the show today. There is Koru. You can go check him out on his Twitch stream at the same name. But thank you very much for your time on the show today, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And there is Thorlefulz. Same name as well for his Twitch stream. Thank you for being on the show today, sir, too. I appreciate your time.
It was a pleasure.
Hopefully you guys can get some things wrapped up and move forward with Blood DKs and 7.2.5. Exciting. Getting all that attention, and we'll see how the hierarchy and the meta shifts for you guys. But again, next week, Holy Paladin. Check out the past shows on YouTube. I don't think I really have anything else to say, because I don't know what the next shows are after that, so be ready to vote on Twitter. But outside of that, trusting your seal of artifact power, enjoy getting to a few pieces of concordance, Legion Fall, and then forgetting about artifact power entirely, because that feels good. I got 5 concordance on my shaman, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. But we will see you here all next week. Thank you very much for watching. But until then, everybody, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Wave bye to these people.
I'm waving bye. I'm waving.
Yeah.